So we have a special election. Normally we don't have elections in 2025 or odd number of years, but we got a special election. So this question, Prop 50, will be the only one in the ballot. So if you want to learn more about gerrymandering, John Oliver has a great show, April 17th, 2017. You can find it on YouTube and learn more about what other states do with their redrawing. California switched before we had the Independent Redistricting Commission, 1991, 2001. The California legislature really gerrymandered the districts, drew them to protect incumbents so that they were incredibly safe seats for the people, the political parties that already had that assembly seat or the Senate seat or the House of Representatives seat. So the districts were drawn to be so safe that not a single seat switched from Republican hands to Democrat hands or Democratic hands to Republican hands in either the 2002 election or the 2004 election. So got people really upset about that. We put two measures on the ballot for the voters to approve, and we moved to an independent redistricting commission. Prop 11 passed in 2008, which did it for the state offices, and then 2 years later, we put Prop 20 on the ballot to extend the commission for the United States House of Representatives seats, so the congressional districts. So we are just a few states that use that. In the green, you can see independent commissions, and then, the vast majority, orange and red and purple, all use the legislature like we did in different ways. And then the gray states don't have congressional redistricting commissions because they only have one congressional seat. So that's not a problem for them because they only send one person. Now, this was the competitive seats in 2024, and you sort of see out of 435 seats, all of the competitive seats that we were watching fit on one slot. So, and really, we didn't even need all of these. So everything in the likely all the way over to the left, there's likely Democrats. Every single one of those Democratic seats stayed with Democratic hands. All the way over to the right, likely Republican. Everything that had been Republican stayed in Republican hands. And really you just have the middle, the toss-ups, where a seat that had been held by a Democrat was won by a Republican. You have a couple of seats that had been held by Republicans, won by Democrats. So there were 2 Democratic seats nationwide that went to Republicans and 4 Republican seats that went to Democrats, and that's it. That means that the vast majority of states are really gerrymandering to protect safe seats for Republicans and Democrats alike so that they are not competitive. That's bad for the voters. But you also see there are 10 seats just from California. So a large number of the seats that are competitive because of our redistricting commission that we have used in the past. So lots of people in 2021, this was a bill in Congress where the main point of this piece of legislation was that every state should be using an independent redistricting commission. So we could stop gerrymandering in all of those other states where the state legislatures control it. It passed in the House, 220 Democrats voted for it. Every single Republican voted against it, and then it failed in the Senate, so it didn't become law. But this is really the push most people will want to see, which is if one state's going to have independent redistricting and have all these competitive seats, and everyone else is going to have safe seats and gerrymander and protect their political parties, it just doesn't fit. So lots of people who looked at this slide with so many California seats competitive and most states not even appearing on the list with anything that was going to be close to competitive, a lot of people in California started to think, we are unilaterally disarmed and giving the control of Congress over to the Republican Party because this solid blue Democratic state is trying to have fair elections when nobody else is. So one of the reasons that this is coming out before the 2026 election for midterm elections, congressional, all 435 members of the House of Representatives will be on the ballot, is because the trend of midterm elections is that the political party that holds the White House tends to lose seats in the midterm elections. There's a couple of exceptions to that. George W. Bush didn't lose a lot of seats in his first midterm. It was after 9/11. There's a lot of support for the Republican Party. He was seen as somebody strong who was keeping us safe from terrorism. But then the next midterm election in 2006, he had lost popularity by a big factor and so lost 30 seats, which made his last 2 years in office really constrained because he had lost control of the House of Representatives. But you can see Clinton, we called this the Republican Revolution of 1994, where 52 seats went to the Republicans and the Republicans held Congress, both the Senate and the House of Representatives, for the first time in 40 years. That has become more uncommon in this last century. Obama lost 63 seats in 2010. Trump lost 40 seats, that blue wave of 2018 in his first term. And so the expectation, there wasn't a big red wave in 2022. There was expectation that Biden might lose 40 seats or 50 seats. He only lost 9, but it was a big blow. Obviously control of the House of Representatives, it helps the president. However, nothing compared to what the Democrats were expecting to think. So one of the reasons that Trump is so worried is because if Democrats control the House of Representatives, that will make it much more difficult. But the Democrats won't be able to do much because anything they pass in the House of Representatives would fail in the Senate. And even if the Democrats got control of the Senate, it's unlikely Trump would sign anything the Democrats actually legislated. However, having the Democrats control the House of Representatives would mean that the House of Representatives cannot pass legislation that helps the presidential administration. So there's a check on the power that we see in these midterm elections, which is why there's a trend of the public saying, oh, let's put a check on that power and face that. So that's kind of the reason behind all of this and the push that we're seeing. So why is California voting to gerrymander districts? It's partially because other states are, so it's a reaction to what we're seeing happen. So President Trump called up the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, to say we want 5 more seats. Please redistrict. Texas did that. So Gavin Newsom, governor of California, said we can get 5 seats too. We can retaliate or correct that, whatever position we want to take, and we can also get 5 seats. So I honestly, Texas gerrymandered the heck out of their map in 2021, which is when we always redistrict the House of Representatives seats. Every 10 years, we take a census, then we reallocate seats from states that have lost population and give more seats to states that have gained population, and then this redistricting happens inside the states. So you can see that there's far fewer Democratic seats already. They took this middle seat and gave it to Republicans. So they already took away a lot of competitive seats and made them much more solid Republicans, taking away some seats from the Democrats. More specifically, they took away competitive seats and made them really gerrymandered. So there's not enough competition. So this is what they did in just this past summer to try to get 5 more seats. Whether or not that will work, I don't know. All of the colors, the deep red, voted for Trump by huge numbers. The dark blue, mostly around cities in Texas, voted for Harris. But that does not mean that they will vote the same way in a midterm election. It doesn't mean the same people will show up. Midterm elections tend to have lower voter turnout, and sometimes people who voted for the president don't want to vote for that political party again in the midterm elections, as we saw from those examples. So I don't know if these 5 seats will stay in the Republican column. They might be more competitive than I think. Missouri redistricted basically the St. Louis area. They already had 6 of 8 seats that were Republican, and now we have they basically took St. Louis, which is a strong Democrat a seat, and just divided up took those Democrats, put them into 3 different districts. We call that cracking up a party, so that it's harder for them to vote together for one person. So it's likely in 2026 that the Republicans in Missouri would have 7 out of 8 districts and lose 1 seat that had been getting in past elections. So California, what is Prop 50? Prop 50 says if you vote yes, it says the state would use new legislatively drawn congressional district maps in 2026, and then they continue to use those maps 2028, 2030, and then in 2030, obviously we have to redraw the districts, so that would go back to the redistricting commission. So essentially, Prop 50 suspends the use of those redistricting maps drawn by the independent commission, and then resets in 2031 when the new maps will happen. So just a temporary, the ballots are going to be mailed October 6th. So look to your mailboxes or October 10th. And then vote centers, if you want to vote in person, you are welcome to. They'll open 11 days before or 4 days before. More will open. You can check your county Register of Voters website to see where those voting centers are. And then you have to return a ballot by November 4th in the mail. There are 3 ways to return that ballot. Every registered voter will get a ballot in the mail, and then they can put it back in the mail. They can take it to a drop box, which is what I do, because those drop boxes are very secure and get picked up every day. And so that ballot gets there a lot faster than through the mail that takes 2 or 3 days. The vote centers obviously are same day. If you lose your ballot, you can go get a new ballot, but it'll be provisional until they verify that you didn't also mail in your original ballot. Or if you spill coffee on your ballot, or you ruin your ballot in some way, or you mark the wrong box, you can surrender your ballot. You can take your ballot with you and get a new ballot, and then they count that immediately. It's not provisional if you're surrendering the ballot. So just so you know, in future, you can do that. What do the new maps look like? So just to kind of give you a comparison, these are the current maps over on the right. You can see that, especially up in Northern California, it's easier to look at those huge big maps to see that they change the shape. And district number 2 is going to be a little bit different. District number 1 is going to be a little bit different. And you're going to see that close up later on when I show you what some of the, District 45 looks like, for instance, in Orange County. That will change a little bit. Essentially, when we talk about 5 maps that are 5 districts that'll change from Republican to Democrat, you can see here which ones they are. And so the current district for district number 1, that really Northern California district, goes from being 25% advantage for the Republican Party to 11-12% for the Democratic Party. So 37-point change, and it's a really safe district for the Democrats. Down here, the 5th district, Gray's district, is going to be pretty competitive still, but it's no longer safe, and a Democrat was able to win that, even though it was pretty solid Republicans. So those are 5 that really flip from red to blue. These are all the districts. Obviously, you don't need to memorize what they are, but just if you want to pause and look to see if your member of Congress is on there, you can see that. So these are going to shift red. Obviously, you have to put some. So if you're going to move some Democrats into Republican seats, you have to move some Republicans into Democratic seats. These are districts that would shift blue, some that you've already seen, and then more that move a smaller district just from a little bit. And then minimal changes for these. Not much change. It's been a 1 point change from a really solid Republican district moving more red, or a really solid Democratic district moving more blue. You can see the close-up of district number 1 here. And then Kevin Kiley's district is going to become more Democrats swoop into Sacramento. So Kevin Kiley was he's in Congress, all of the incumbents already in the House of Representatives. And we saw him really campaigning for that HR 1. He is trying to get everybody to stop mid-district changes because he wants to keep his job. So he didn't convince Texas not to do it. He didn't convince the House of Representatives to pass that bill from 2021 that everybody would have a redistricting commission. But obviously, it's because he is going to have a very difficult time winning this seat. Not impossible. He has a lot of name recognition. It all depends on turnout, but it will be harder for him to win now. Ken Calvert's seats actually gets moved completely. So you're going to see this part of Palm Springs and the desert areas move into a different district, Darrell Issa's district. And we're just picking that up and moving it over here into Los Angeles. And so Ken Calvert could run for it. Nothing in the Constitution says you can't, but that's a really solid blue district. And it's unlikely that he would run for that. So Darrell Issa picks up that. This more red area, it's going to be harder for Darrell Issa to win that re-election. This is District 45 that Derek Tran won against Michelle Steele, who had been a Republican representing that area. We're just going to increase the number of Democrats, and it'll change the demographics a little bit. You'll see more Asians joining the district, 41% now. We're going to add that, push out some of the boundaries, but this is what the district then looks like if Prop 50 passes. I have no idea if it'll pass or not. The League of Women Voters is in support of ending gerrymandering. They were a big proponent of HR 1 that would have instituted independent redistricting commissions in every single state. They were trying to convince Gavin Newsom and the state of Texas not to do this mid-decade districting, but they have said we won't take a position on Prop 50. So if you see any ads that claim that the League of Women Voters is against Prop 50, they are not taking a position. A couple of polls just to show you the difference and why you should read the poll to see what they ask. This essentially came out and said Californians are against Prop 50. Well, not really. You can read it to see that what 64% of people were agreeing with is we like redistricting commissions and we want to keep that. Well, sure, 20 years, the state of California has said like redistricting commissions are good. There are more competitive seats. So this was also early in July. So it's unclear if that's going to stay. It's not a great poll because it doesn't claim the statement that people are saying. Then you take another poll later on, almost 5,000 registered voters, really good, solid poll in August. We're getting more information about this, and it's going to be more clear to say, this is temporarily replacing the redistricting commission. It will go back in 2030, and you get still a lot of people who are unsure, 20% who are unsure, but more people who are saying yes. 32% who are opposed. A lot of people are opposed to this, especially Republicans who do not want to lose seats. This poll in September, now we're starting to see fewer people be undecided. No goes up by 2 points, but it's in the margin of error. It's only 1,000 people in the poll, good poll, but 51% now say they would support it. So if you can get those registered voters to actually vote, it does better. Now, lots of money being spent. For a long time, the no on 50 had, Charles Munger put in $30 million immediately. So they had a lot of money, but more groups, more interest groups are supporting yes on 50. So now it's got $60 million to spend. It's just insane that we're talking about $100 million. Now, the good thing about campaign spending, I will just remind you, is that it goes to print shops to make signs, and it goes to digital advertising to purchase ads. So it's not all terrible money, but I still think, oh, we could, feed the homeless and, I don't know, fix a road. That would be nice. I would like fewer potholes. So this is Charles Munger. He's a big player in Republican politics in California, spending $30 million of his own, billions, and sent out those mailers that falsely claimed that the League of Women Voters was against it. So Donald Trump and Kevin McCarthy he was the former Speaker of the House of Representatives from Bakersfield, and then Arnold Schwarzenegger, they can't quite agree on a message, and so they're doing two different groups with two different messages. That's probably good for the no. The more you can confuse voters or the more different reasons to vote no isn't a terrible campaign strategy to get people to be opposed for different reasons. This is they're calling it the Election Rigging Response Act. Voters have the power to fight against fascism, a message of why people should support it. Vote yes on Prop 50. Calling it the Election Rigging Response Act probably is effective to communicate that it's in response to Texas, if enough people understand that. There are some other states that might be changing. It's hard to keep track, although I have to say, the time is kind of running out for next year's elections, because just in California, for Young Kim's seat, District 40, which is part of Orange County, and then all San Bernardino County, Chino Hills is in that area. She gets a much better district for Republicans, because we're going to move more Republicans in. You look at that slide that showed which district is becoming more Republican, and hers is one of them. But there's already 8 Democrats who are running against her and have been for a year. So they won't have much chance of winning if the district gets changed. So all these states that are thinking about changing it, time is kind of running out. But Ohio has a fall deadline to redraw theirs. They have a state law that they have drawn in correctly. Florida might get into the game just because Governor DeSantis always likes to be part of these political battles. New York has a lot of legislative problems that their constitution prohibits this. There's some court cases happening that Alabama violated the Voting Rights Act with their 2021 maps, and so they may have to redraw. North Carolina has a trial over their gerrymandering seats. Utah is supposed to use a commission, and they didn't. So there are a couple of more states that might shift those issues, but you can look for more information. The Legislative Analyst Office always does a great job of giving background. If you're ever confused about a proposition, just go to that LAO office. It's lao.ca.gov. We Draw the Lines is the Independent Redistricting Commission. Ballotpedia, amazing resource for election information. I always go there first because they collect all of the sources that you can go. The Assembly actually you can type in your address and see what your current map looks like, and then your next map, and then you can go and look at Protect the Voters First and Stop 50, Prop 50. Those are the two against Prop 50, and then the Election Rigging Response on yes on 50 will give you more information about why they're supporting. So that gives you more information about Prop 50, and hopefully you can be informed voters.